Hey, KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra for another week, and it's kind of a slow week compared to how things have been going, Tom Keegan.
Yes, it is.
Been a lot
Matt
of basketball,
Tate.
a lot of big games, a lot of football action, a coaching search. This week's just kind of hanging in there. There has been some football recruiting news. They signed 7 guys of the mid-year transfer variety, and that's definitely a good place to start. I know a lot of people are freaking out about, hey, I thought we were done with JUCO guys, but 7 guys isn't too many, right?
It's not too many. You're going to supplement that with guys who are going to be walk-ons and 2 years from now will become scholarship players, and that does not count against the year, just against the total.
Yeah, so you're still going to have 2/3 of this class going to be high school guys, if not more. So, and you know, they got some good players in this group. A JUCO All-American running back. MJ Mathis is a cornerback that they really like. The old staff like, the new staff likes as well. So guys that they could definitely see panning out and contributing sooner rather than later. But this week we're not going to talk good news, bad news. We're not going to talk much football because that's really all that's going on right now as we still wait to hear the staff. We are going to talk Kansas basketball. We're going to do a little something that Tom concocted in his own brain by himself. Tell him about it.
It's something I've thought about always, that basketball players are like snowflakes. They're like fingerprints. No two are alike. Even the Morris twins, who are identical DNA-wise and environment-wise, are not identical, but they're pretty close.
As players.
Yeah, as players, they're maybe close, but they're different.
Yeah, right.
And the thing is, the first thing you say when you hear about a recruit being signed, you ask the coach, who does he remind you of? Well, then he may say something, and then the rest of the discussion is, but this guy's better at that guy's worse at that. The differences are so much greater in basketball players than the similarities that it's a really difficult exercise to take any one team and say, who does this guy remind you of? So I thought that during the Bill Self era, we'll take this year's roster and take each player. You have a list, I have a list. We haven't shared our list.
No.
Who does this guy
for the first time on network television? Oh, wait, sorry.
Well, on the internet video, I guess you'd call it.
Same diff.
KU Sports Extra.
Yeah, good.
Brought to you by nobody yet, but if you're interested, contact our sales staff.
Yeah. But it's a great idea, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I know we had a good time kind of looking back at past Bill Self rosters and trying to fit the pieces together there. It's funny you bring that up, too, because one of the first recruiting stories that I did when I took the KU football beat was on Brandon Bourbon. He was a 4-star guy. He switched from Stanford and was coming to Kansas. I got a hold of his high school coach, and I said, well, you know, give me a guy that he reminds you of. You know, a player that he plays like, similar style.
Did he say the Stanford Heisman candidate or no?
No. He went 10 steps above that. He said Adrian Peterson.
Okay.
And he said, to be fair, just like you said, he said, hey, he's obviously not that good, but he runs with that same style. He's fast. He can run through guys. And you know, when you qualify it like that, it's not crazy, but
it's crazy. But Brandon Bourbon, when he did play, played well.
Yeah.
I mean, he will end his career with a good yards per carry. I don't know what it is. I think it's over 5.
It is over 5,
He just had difficulty staying healthy. And that's a shame because he was a good football player who just couldn't stay healthy.
Would have been really cool to see him have 1 or 2 full seasons. There were enough times when we were in the press box when he did get in games where you were like, God, is that Adrian Peterson out there?
No, I don't think so quite. There were games where I said he should play linebacker.
Yeah, that's true. He did say that. All right, well, I love the idea. I'm excited to unveil my list. I'm even more excited to hear yours. You want to start this thing off?
Okay, we'll start with we're going to do it by numerical order since neither of us are capable of alphabetizing. So we'll start with number 0, Frank Mason. And this comparison's been made before, and I think it's valid in a lot of ways, and that is Sharon Collins. Sharon Collins obviously was a better pure shooter, even more aggressive, a little bit taller, thicker, had better dribble moves to free himself for shots. But I think the fact that they're very aggressive, very athletic, point guards who tough, love to attack the hoop. There's some similarities there, and I think Frank Mason may be a better defender than Sharon Collins.
Yeah, it's an easy one, and I actually have the same. You know,
okay.
I don't think we have too many similar. We asked Benton to look at our lists separately without us knowing, and our whiz bag behind the camera, Benton Smith, that is.
And he said we have 1 or 2 alike. I forget which it was.
But this is one, and I was going to try to force it and think well, maybe there's someone else, but there really isn't. I do think that Sharon was much more of a natural-born leader than Frank Mason has shown to be so far. And so there are plenty of differences too, but the main things, their DNA as players, who they are.
And they both tended, when they had a turnover, next play down the court, they'd figure out a way to get the ball right back. Tyshawn Taylor had that too.
Right, definitely. So 1 for 1 right there, I agree with you completely. Sharon Collins. Who's next?
Number 1, Wayne Selden. And I had a real tough time with Wayne Selden, and I ended up with 2 different guys and basically flipped a coin in my head. And the coin came out tails, and tails was Elijah Johnson.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because both guys, if you really looked at it, their best position would be shooting guard. Well, I'm not going to say who the other guy is yet, but Selden, though, and Elijah, their both best position would be shooting guard. Selden can fit in at point guard if you need him to, which they need him to now for stretches, with Frank Mason being the only healthy point guard.
Elijah did the same thing.
Elijah, really more of a 2 guard, but more of a combo guard than Selden probably, but he ended up being a point guard for a while. And neither one of them did any one thing exceptionally well as a basketball player. Obviously, Elijah Johnson was an exceptional leaper, but as a basketball player, pretty good ball handler.
Pretty good shooter.
Decent shooter, pretty good at driving to the hole, pretty good defender, probably not quite as good a defender as Selden, and I think Selden has more leadership qualities than Elijah Johnson ever did. But so that's what I went with, and I'd be curious to see if the other guy that I almost went with was on your list, or maybe even your pick. Who did you pick?
I picked Travis Relaford.
That's who I had, is the guy I almost, for a similar reason, not great at anyone, although probably Travis is a better defender than either one of those other guys.
Better defender, probably a better finisher too. I mean, he was really good at finishing at the rim,
especially in transition.
Exactly. But I just looked at it as that kind of, like you said, all-around versatile guy that could do a little bit of everything. I think Relaford was an underrated passer. I think Wayne Selden's passing ability is very underrated. I think
Wayne Selden's probably a better passer than
Relaford. He's really good, yeah.
Or a better passer than Johnson, for that matter.
Yeah, definitely. So, but you're talking about a guy that could play multiple positions, fit into different spots, do what he had to do whenever the coaches needed him to. I mean, Relaford played some 4 at times, and I think that Selden could be asked to do that, and I think he could hold up for 10, 15 minutes if it was necessary.
No question.
That's we're not too far off there, and all 3 of those guys are definitely in the same pool, even though they're, as you mentioned, like snowflakes. They're very different. But who's next?
Number 2 would be Cliff Alexander. The one that Bill Self has used is Thomas Robinson. I think that's a pretty good one, but I didn't end up going with him. I almost did. I ended up going with Cole Aldrich, which is not the first name that would pop to mind. Thomas Robinson is, but when you think about it, Cliff Alexander is a close to the basket guy with long arms who really goes after rebounds. He's probably a better offensive rebounder than Cole Aldrich, and not as good a defensive rebounder as Cole Aldrich, but really good rebounder, blocks some shots, not as good a shot blocker as Cole Aldrich. He's not as tall as Cole Aldrich, but he's really kind of a center more than he is anything else.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Did you go with Thomas Robinson?
No, I didn't, and I think the reason is just tenacity. I don't think that Cliff, looks so angry, looks so pained, looks so violent when he's doing everything he does out there. He actually looks like he's having fun, and I know Thomas Robinson enjoyed winning and enjoyed dominating, and it was fun for him, but it often looked like he was just mad at everybody and everything, and that's why he was so good, because he channeled that passion into rebounds and points and dunks, and I just don't see that as much in Cliff, at least not right now. And you're talking about junior year Thomas Robinson versus freshman Cliff Alexander. That's tough to compare there too. But I went with Darnell Jackson, and similar reasons. Darnell Jackson was a creative scorer. He could be really unstoppable at times in that low block area. He wasn't the tallest dude either, but he had that jump hook that was tough. He had decent touch on his. He was a good free throw shooter. Decent touch on that mid-range jumper, and I think Cliff's probably a little bit better all around, certainly. But I think, you're talking Darnell Jackson's senior year. He was a huge player on that national championship.
Ran the floor in both directions really hard.
Yeah.
Some obvious huge differences between Darnell Jackson and Cliff Alexander. One is that Darnell Jackson had a good outside shot.
Right.
Really good touch from 15 feet. That's not part of Cliff Alexander's game yet, and when it is, he looks a little awkward. Sometimes goes in when it looks awkward. Not as natural a shooter as Darnell Jackson. But I think the biggest difference, and it stems from a physical difference between the two, is that Cliff Alexander's a good shot blocker.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, one reason for that, is he has really long arms.
Length, exactly.
And Darnell Jackson, when you think of all the big men at Kansas, probably had the shortest arms.
No doubt about it.
He didn't have that, so he wasn't the defensive presence that a lot of the other bigs are, like Cole Aldrich or Cliff Alexander. And he doesn't have the neither one of them, though. Here's how they're alike. Neither one of them have that real back-to-the-basket offensive game.
Right.
So they are similar in that way.
Yeah, not too different. Devonte Graham's next.
Devonte Graham,
Tough one.
I had a tough time with him because I was thinking a couple of backcourt mates. It could be sort of a combination of Russell Robinson and Mario Chalmers, but not necessarily as good. Certainly not as good as
Mario Robinson.
Yeah, not quite as good as Mario Robinson. So I ended up going with neither of those guys, and I went all the way back to Aaron Miles because I think he's a good passer, a good pure point guard, and he's quick. He can get some steals. It's just a shame the injuries he's had. We haven't been able to see as much of him because it was going to be really fun to watch his development throughout his freshman year. And we'll see. Maybe he's back in a month, and maybe he's gone for the season with a severe case of turf toe on his big toe.
Yeah, I like that. Miles was the guy a lot of people compared Graham to when he was coming in and before we could see him too much. And that's definitely right in the ballpark. I went with Jeff Hawkins, though. Similar guy, tenacity's there, toughness is there. And I think that Devonte Graham, like I felt about Jeff Hawkins, is fearless. I don't think he has any concerns out there. He doesn't worry about his body. He doesn't worry about messing up. He plays fearless, and that's what Hawkins did. That's what got him on the floor. And this is a guy that didn't come in expecting big minutes and ended up playing big minutes a little bit. So I think
Hawkins might be a little deeper shooting range,
right,
even better shooter, but not the blow-by ability that Devonte Graham has, and not the feeding the post ability quite either.
Yeah. But that fearless factor was something that stood out to me, and both can shoot the ball for sure. So let's see. Next, your guy, your favorite name to pronounce.
Sviatoslav Mihailuk.
Which you still do it better than any broadcaster.
Well, they could say Mikhailuk. I don't think so. No, I think the K is silent, and that's what Svi said, and why not go with him?
I'd listen.
He's never called one of his own games, but again, here's the thing where you say, here's how they're similar, and then a million people will jump in and say they're different.
Right. Just be angry at you.
They are different, and there are a couple of obvious differences. Although Sviatoslav Mihailuk does have jumping ability, he certainly doesn't have the jumping ability of Brandon Rush, and he hasn't yet shown the shooting touch of Brandon Rush, but Brandon Rush was a 19, 20-year-old freshman, and Sviatoslav Mihailuk is a 17-year-old freshman. So there's a little projecting going on there. I think Sviatoslav Mihailuk is a better ball handler than Brandon Rush. They're about the same size, and they both move so gracefully. Both move their feet so great on defense. Again, though, Sviatoslav doesn't have the strength Brandon did as a freshman because Brandon was a couple of years older. But that's who I came up with, and I think Svi is a better ball handler than Brandon already.
Not bad. I had two guys for Svi, and really I think you could go either way. Tyrell Reed or Brady Morningstar. I think they're both great athletes. I think that Svi is a great athlete. I went with Brady, though. I think that Coach Sells talked a ton about ball movement and a guy that has the intelligence out there. And obviously, this kid's 17 years old. He's been out there starting some games, and he was one of the first guys on this team that Self could kind of trust. So he's in a little bit of a slump right now. But I think that's what I think of when I think of Brady Morningstar, a guy that plays defense and likes it, a guy that's selfless, I should say, moves the ball, doesn't worry about his shot, wants to make teammates
good touch
better. Yeah, and long and athletic. And Brady was underrated in that capacity. I don't think people realize how athletic he was. But he was really athletic, and so is Svi. So.
And again, Brady was older
Right.
He was 19-year-old freshman, something like that, 20-year-old freshman. Might have been a 20-year-old freshman. And Brady obviously is probably 4 inches shorter than Svi. So Brady's an American kid playing overseas. Svi is an overseas kid who's going to be playing professionally in America.
Incredible. Next up, Kelly Oubre.
This, I think, was the single most challenging one on the entire board.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
None
of them were easy.
None of them were easy because there are more differences between any two basketball players on the planet.
Snowflakes.
Again, snowflakes, fingerprints. Than there are similarities. So maybe these two players have absolutely no similarities.
He's a little worried about this.
I'm worried about this. I just couldn't come up with one.
He doesn't want to tell you.
It's as different as left and right. I mean, I'm ashamed to even say it. Maybe it's so
Joel
bad.
Embiid? Is that who you went with?
No, I went with Julian Wright.
Okay.
Both explosive jumpers, Julian more so. Both guys who kind of want to be perimeter players but are better suited to play underneath. Julian was a great passer. We haven't seen enough of Oubre to see what his passing skills are. Julian thought he was a great ball handler. We have seen enough of Oubre to know that he's a significantly better ball handler than Julian Wright was.
Somebody called Julian Wright Magic Johnson or something.
Yeah, and he believed it.
Just pound, pound, pound.
Yeah, he believed it.
Unbelievable to watch. Yeah.
And Julian Wright wasn't a slasher. Kelly Oubre is. Why did I pick Julian Wright? I don't know. I really don't know. I just couldn't come.
Best inside at KUsports.
I could not come up with anybody for Kelly Oubre.
Well, that's because we went numerically, and that's because this guy was already off your list. But I went with Brandon Rush here. And I think that there's a similarity in their shooting ability. I think that Oubre, same sort of thing. I mean, Rush was a much better shooter, but I think Oubre
much better.
Wants to be that guy and maybe could develop into that guy. And then I think the other thing is Oubre has a chance to become a big-time defender. He's good with his anticipation. He's good with his length.
Yes.
He's disruptive. And Brandon Rush was the lockdown kind of guy. You know, this is more of a Mario Chalmers type of.
Yeah, he's more of a I don't know, a Julian Wright type defender, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But I went with Rush here. So we've got Rush. That's kind of the cool thing about this exercise. It's fun to see one guy on your side and the same guy for a different guy on my side.
Right, and I'm not sure either one of those is
it's probably
any good at all for Oubre, but we just couldn't come up with somebody. We like your help, and it's easy to say that's a horrible pick.
Well,
but you can't say that unless you say, here's a better pick.
Right, and everyone wanted him to be Andrew Wiggins. Just slide right in. He hasn't proven to be that yet either.
No, he hasn't at all. I don't see similarities there. But
all right, Brandon Green, next up on the list, number 14.
Brandon Green.
Another tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I thought about his former teammate, Andrew White. I think Brandon Green's a better driver. He's a more creative scorer near the hoop. Outside shooters, they're similar, but Brandon Green can get his shot off more quickly and elevates higher. I ended up going with Alex Galindo, who didn't get a chance to play much here, and certainly Brandon Green is more athletic than Alex Galindo, right. But there's a bigger body who could really shoot, and Brandon Green is a great shooter, beautiful jump shot. So again, not a great one, but I couldn't think of a perfect fit for Brandon Green.
Micah Downs, maybe, huh?
I thought about Micah Downs, but
I
did because Micah Downs, I think, had more guard skills than Brandon Green.
Yeah, agreed.
And Brandon Green's a better shooter.
Right.
Downs was a good shooter, but I did think about him. But
yeah, this is the toughest one for me, I think. And I think Brandon Green's fantastic. I think he's a tremendous player. I'm a big fan of his game. I think, like you think, he's going to have an NBA future.
Possibly, yeah.
But right now, the two things that stand out to me about Brandon Green are exactly what we just talked about. He's a great shooter. So that was part of my criteria here. The other thing is he doesn't play much defense. He's just not a good defender yet. I'm not saying he won't become
Doesn't
one,
move his feet great.
But he doesn't look comfortable.
Becoming more attentive, I think, than he was last year.
He is.
It's just not a natural defender.
No, it's not at all. And part of it's his length and his body. It just doesn't crouch, I guess. He's just playing a different style out there. But because of those two things, I went with Connor Tien. I think that Connor Tien came in and he had one job, and that was the knockdown shot.
I actually had him on my list for Green.
And I mean, I think Brandon Green's job is to go out there and knock down shots. He can do more things. And to be fair to Connor, I think Connor tried much harder defensively than Brandon Green does. He just wasn't quite the athlete that he is. Didn't have the length either.
And he can't get his shots off as easily as Brandon Green can.
Right. But both of these guys, you leave them open, their job's to knock down the shot. So I went with Connor Tien. And
the thing about Connor Tien, his father Mark, we talked to him in an airport a couple of times. One of the funniest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
I haven't met Brandon's father, but Gary Bedore really thinks highly of him.
Oh, we should have got Gary on this show.
You know.
Did you ever talk to him about it?
Yes,
wow.
And
God, again.
You know, sometimes Gary will humor you and discuss it. This time, he didn't even look. He was walking in, didn't even look, and he just said no. And then he turned around and started talking to Bobby Nightingale about something else.
Wow, the audacity.
Yeah,
he hates it. I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Well, you never want to say never, but he really.
Boy.
I question whether he even watches KU Sports Extra.
What? Yeah. Who doesn't?
Well, that's a good question. Every one of you watches it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
Well, let's move on. Regardless of what Gary thinks, I don't even care if he likes these comparisons or not. Jamari Traylor's next on the list, number 31. How about that? We go from 14 to 31.
Yeah, there's a big gap there. It's not cool, I guess, first of all, it's not cool to have double-digit numbers anymore.
Right, 1, 5, 2.
Even though 32 was good enough for Jim Brown and Sandy Koufax.
Yeah, clearly.
I mean, dating myself, but.
All right, Traylor.
Traylor, you know, a lot of people you can consider for this, and we did consider a lot. I did at least, and I ended up with Quintrell Thomas, who was here for 1 year, transferred to Vegas, you know, played some at Vegas, maybe 15 minutes a game.
Good move, though, to go out there.
Yeah.
More there than he would have here.
Right, yeah. Very similar bodies, not great hands. Certainly the biggest difference would be that Traylor is a lot more athletic.
Yeah.
Runs faster, jumps higher, blocks shots better. But Quintrell Thomas was kind of the one I thought of, you know, not a guy who's going to be a scoring threat. And, you know, Jamari Traylor had a good offensive game against Eastern Kentucky, a couple others in his career, but so far doesn't have confidence in his mid-range jumper, and I think that would open up a lot for him. He's a better driver to the hoop than Thomas, so clearly Jamari Traylor's a better player than Quintrell Thomas, but he's certainly an incomplete player at this point.
I like mine here, and it was one of the last ones I came up with, but it's Kevin Young, and they don't have the same haircut by any means.
Thought of him for this.
But I like that because
energy guys.
Yeah, exactly. More of what they're supposed to be than what they actually are. They're both supposed to be guys that give energy, steal extra possessions, rebound the ball, score in close, nothing else. I mean, how many
nothing
times
else to rebound
Kevin
but the ball, but go ahead.
Sit there wide open and not shoot. And everybody was like, why not? You know, even from the free throw line, he wouldn't take that shot. And that was because he knew his game. That was because he knew what was expected of him. I think if Traylor can get closer to that level with his mind and his mindset, he can have that same kind of impact that Young did. And Young was fantastic on a couple of good teams. So
yeah, I thought of it, and it's not a bad one. I think at this point, Young brought more his senior year than I would project Traylor to be.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Landon Lucas, who's been starting here for a while, but maybe isn't going to from here on out. I don't know. It would be interesting.
Yeah.
He played 7 minutes against Utah.
Yeah, and I think he's played his biggest minutes.
Right.
Definitely. But I struggled with this one because he's better than this guy, but he has a similar game. He can certainly jump better than this guy, but basically a fundamental guy.
Yeah.
But too slow. If you could give him a quick drop step, I think he'd then have a weapon offensively. But right now he doesn't have a weapon offensively. He's certainly better than Matt Kleinman, but when I see Landon Lucas, the first guy who comes to mind is Matt Kleinman. You know, Matt Kleinman, had he been able to jump, and Matt Kleinman really, really was vertically challenged in the jumping department.
Sure. Not bad. I'm on the opposite side of it a little bit. I've got CJ Giles, almost exactly the same size, 6'10", 6'11", 240. Giles was a better athlete than Landon Lucas.
Considerably better.
But he really didn't get much out of it. I I mean, he didn't really bring it to the table and use his athleticism to do much. And I think in that way, Lucas has gotten more out of his body than what Giles did out of his. But this was the hardest one for me, probably. I might have said that earlier. If I did, rewind it and just yell at me.
Who would have thought that that the name C.J. Giles would come up twice on this show, but it's going to come up later for one of my comparisons.
That's exciting. We got to move on to Perry Ellis now, though. Hey, we only put him at the end because he's number 34. There's one more guy after him. I would have probably put Perry second or third if we were doing this, just to give people Perry Ellis's comparison. But we had to wait, Tom.
Well, that's good. You want to keep people waiting.
I want to follow the numbers too.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, like that.
All right, the guy I'm going to compare him to is an NBA player, and I don't know that Perry Ellis will be an NBA player. I think he'll make a ton of money over in Europe and be a high scorer over there, and he's a kid who would enjoy, I think, Europe. Sure. A cerebral kid who would, I think, really find it cool learning other cultures and stuff. So it's not a negative to say that I don't think he'll be an NBA player, but the guy I'm comparing him to is an NBA player, Marcus Morris, because they're a little bit undersized for power forwards, but they both had nice moves underneath. Marcus had more moves on the perimeter than Perry. He's sort of a catch and shoot when he's on the perimeter. About the same size, Marcus Morris, bigger and more aggressive than Perry Ellis. Better passer than Perry Ellis, because Morris is a very good passer.
Well, and he knew where Markieff was all the time.
He always knew where Markieff was. They had an automatic outlet. Both of them just knew their automatic outlet was their mirror image. So I'm going to go with Marcus Morris for Perry Ellis.
Yeah, not bad. He was on my list for sure. I mean, that's one guy that comes to mind. The guy I went with, though, is also an NBA player, and it's Darrell Arthur. I think very similar type of players. A guy that can handle the ball, a guy that can attack the rim, a guy that can shoot from the perimeter a little bit. And I think if Arthur were on any other team, he'd be doing a lot more of what you see Perry Ellis doing. But he had to fit a role on that championship team, and he fit it very well. I think he sacrificed a lot of his own personal growth, just to be on that team that could win it all. But, boy, two great athletes, two great talents, versatile skills. I mean,
two very fast runners of the floor, very fast. That'd be their number one thing for both. I think Arthur's taller. He's a more explosive jumper. Definitely. He's a better athlete. Probably similar shooters, but I think that Perry's a better ball handler.
Yeah, probably so.
But that's not a bad one at all. It's
it's okay.
Again, Arthur's more talented than Perry, but that's not a bad one.
Right. I mean, they're snowflakes.
There you go.
Everybody knows what this means.
Yeah. Fingerprints and snowflakes.
All right, let's finish it off with Hunter Mickelson, 42 on the number list there. That's his number, and we're sticking to it. What do you have?
He can run the floor decent.
Yeah.
He can jump decent, and he can time his block shots. And those are all three things that C.J. Giles could do.
Nice.
And C.J. Giles is more talented than Hunter Mickelson.
C.J. Giles.
But
the guy that never was at Kansas, and now he's on this list twice.
Remarkably similar statistics between C.J. Giles and his father, Chester Giles, who came here with kind of some fanfare, as did C.J., and neither of them really produced much in the way of numbers. Certainly weren't as productive as the Morningstar father-son tandem of Roger and Brady.
Yeah, I think everything you said for my answer is exactly the same thing. I mean, in fact, if Benton wants to just take your words and put them into my mouth here, that'll be a little freaky, but he could do it because that's what I'm comparing this person to, those same exact criteria that you used. But it's Justin Wesley.
I thought about him for this exact one.
A guy that exactly did that. He was a good jumper, a good athlete. He could run well. He could play inside a little bit. But the thing about Wesley and the thing about Mickelson that I think is why I went with Wesley here is they both kind of had a hard time finding a place on the floor, finding a time. And I think that's the role Hunter Mickelson's in right now. There's not a lot of playing time to be had for him. And Wesley was in the same boat, I think, on a lot of other teams, certainly around the country, but even some other Kansas teams. Justin Wesley would have played some minutes, and he just didn't play that.
I don't know how many minutes he would have played. He was at Lamar as a freshman. Right. That's only as a freshman, didn't play much. But the thing that Hunter Mickelson has more is a better outside shot than Justin Wesley, certainly. And I think, although we haven't seen him play at Kansas, based on what he did at Arkansas, I think that Mickelson's a better shot blocker and better at staying out of foul trouble than Wesley, and also better at staying out of foul trouble than C.J. Giles.
Sure, yeah, but either way, guys that sort of fit the same molds, the same idea.
But I think our exercises prove that there are more differences than there are similarities when it comes to basketball players and when it comes to fingerprints and snowflakes.
No doubt. I would love to hear if we forgot anyone. The comments section would be a good place to tell us. I'm sure we did, and I'm sure there might have been some guys that we just completely overlooked.
Yeah. What I don't want to read in the comment section is, how could you compare him to him? So-and-so is way better. No kidding. Not interested in hearing that. I'm interested in hearing this would have been a better comparison for that player.
Like Mario
I really
Robinson.
would love to. Yeah, would love to hear that because,
it's impossible to do. We tried
it
to
is.
do this
It's really
in like
hard.
10, 15 minutes to pull these names out. So obviously we did it, so it's not impossible. I shouldn't say that, but it is really hard. Let's finish this week off just like we finish every other week. We've got to get to the obnoxious man. Who do you have?
I have Chris Conte, who is a defensive back for the Bears and who's frustrated that concussions have kept him from getting on the field. And he said, I would give 10 to 15 years of my life to play in the NFL.
I saw that. Yeah,
that's fine to say that, but the concussion thing isn't really just a length of issue. It's not so much a quantity issue as it is a quality issue.
Definitely.
And concussions can lead to dementia. That's no way to live. Believe me, I've been around a lot of close people with dementia, and it's just heartbreaking to see them go through that. And on the roster of the Bears in the past, you don't have to go any farther than the secondary of the Bears. Conte's a D-back as well. Dave Duerson committed suicide by shooting himself in the chest so that his brain could be studied. He suffered from depression and dementia. He was convinced it was from the concussions that he got playing football. And then you could look at Jim McMahon, who has had some dementia issues also from practicing too often without his helmet and other things like that. So I'm sure Conte didn't mean anything by it, but you got to be careful when you come out against being cautious with concussions.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything you say is going to be taken so seriously and spread all over the world nowadays. So I saw that headline and I thought the same sort of thing, like, man, that's probably don't want to go there. A place I don't want to go is to this group of people. These are my obnoxious people for this week. I do groups a lot, I'm noticing. I know it's supposed to be the most obnoxious man, but there are several men in this group, and that's the Kobe Bryant haters. Kobe Bryant just passed Michael Jordan on the all-time scoring list. He's in third place, Jordan's in fourth. Doesn't mean Kobe's a better player.
No.
It just means he scored more points. And I don't really get the angst and the anger and the venom being thrown at Kobe. Why can't people handle this more like Andrew Wiggins did, who said, man, I was really happy to be on the floor that night and see history. That was really cool. It's a young kid who has that maturity. These people that are just spitting things out like, well, of course he has more points. He took 400 more shots and 1,000 more free throws.
Nobody's saying that he's a better player.
Yeah, you know
and
what
give
else
him
he did?
credit for having that long of a career.
That's exactly right. You know what else he did? He played with Shaquille O'Neal. There were plenty of games and plenty of seasons where the ball ran through Shaq and not through Kobe.
Probably not as much as it should have.
Yeah, right. Probably not. But if he hadn't played with Shaq, he might have done it 3 years ago. So it doesn't really matter. It's cool that he did it. It's cool that we all got to see it. Relax. Karl Malone's not better than either one of them, but he has more points.
Well, this is like exactly. This is like the criticism of LeBron James when he decided to join hands with Dwayne Wade. And he got ripped because he's trying to manufacture a championship. You want to win.
Right.
You're supposed to want to win. And you talk about Maturi and Wiggins' reaction. Danny Manning, I interviewed him about it at the time, and he said, geez, I hope it works out because I think it's great that a guy wants to play for a championship team and on a team where he'll share the stage and stuff. I mean, I never understood. It was cheesy. It was South Beachy. To say I'm taking my talents to South Beach.
Way over the top. That's what it was.
Well, that's the style of it, but the substance of what he did,
you
can't criticize. And then the style and the substance of returning to Cleveland is very cool. The style being him saying that this was like I'd never gone to college,
so cool.
So my 4 years in Miami were like my college years.
Yeah.
Now I'm back home. That was one cool thing about that. And the other cool thing was when he said, I want my children to grow up where I grew up because I think it's a good place to raise a family.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Very cool. Very obnoxious on both of these fronts. Hopefully the player-by-player comparison was not obnoxious. It was a lot of fun to do. We'll do it again sometime. We'll do it with football sometime.
Oubre, someone come up with a comparison for Oubre because mine was horrible and his was not much better.
It was really good. Don't worry about him. Thanks for checking out KU Sports Extra this week, and we'll see you guys next week. Be sure to log on to KUsports.com every day, all day for all the rest of our content. We'll talk to you guys next time.